Hi, this is Mark Sabatella from Outside Shore Music. In this video, I want to talk about sequences. A sequence is like a melodic motif that then repeats itself maybe a step higher or a step lower, maybe a third higher or lower, maybe some other interval. But actually, in particular, I'm going to be talking about sequences that repeat a step lower because they're especially common, especially useful because they arise very naturally from how the circle of fifths works. So let me play you this little example here, and then we'll talk about what's making it work. So it's in the key of D major, and it goes like this. Nice, simple little passage here. But what's happening here, if you look at the melody, that little two-measure melody starting on A is essentially repeated now starting on the G. So we have that passage first starting on A, and then we have essentially the exact same passage starting on G. Now, why is it that this works so well? And it's actually really easy to do once you get the trick to this. And it's because of the circle of fifths. Let's look at the bass line here. The bass line in the key of D, this is 3 to 6. Well, that's the circle of fifths, right? If you want to, I have it going up a fourth, but it's the same as down a fifth, right? 3 to 6 is resolving down a fifth. 3 to 6. Well, you could think of that as its own little melody that then repeats down a step to 5 and then 1, right? So 3 to 6 to 2 to 5 to 1 is all circle of fifths, but it's always going to create that same idea of 3 to 6, then repeating 2 to 5, right? That same relationship of 3 to 6 gets repeated 2 to 5. So if you have a melody that works over 3 to 6, like this one, then you can just take that same melody and adapt it to work over the 2-5. And then resolve it to 1, right? Now, there's a couple little details that you might want to pay attention to here. One is that 6th chord, I actually made a dominant 7th 6th chord, right? I did that so that, well, first of all, it's just going to sound good on its own. It's a secondary dominant. It's 5 of 2. Also, it allows then this melody to resemble its repetition, because we know when we get to the 5 chord we're going to have a dominant 7th, so we probably want to have a dominant 7th for our 6th chord. And also, if you really pay attention, you might notice that the intervals are ever so slightly different. This interval, when it starts going down, goes a whole step from beat 2 to beat and of 2, but in the next key, it's a half step from beat 2 to the and of 2. And that's just because they exist at different places within the scale. And that's perfectly normal. I could have actually made that G a G sharp. I could have done that, but it doesn't feel right to do that here to me, in part because I know I'm going eventually to E minor, and that G sharp just feels wrong there. But in other cases, you might find it useful to actually make more chromatic modifications to make your repetition exact. So, this is a sequence and showing how that sequence just arises very naturally because I've got a melody that works over 3 to 6, and then all I got to do is repeat that same melody over 2 to 5, and I've got myself a sequence. Works every time.